Bonjour, bienvenue à notre rendez-vous quotidien pour la presse, en ligne et en direct sur EBS. Nous sommes aujourd'hui le lundi 7 décembre. Pour commencer, je voudrais passer directement la parole à Anna pour une annonce concernant notre coopération avec l'Union africaine. Anna.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. So today we have an announcement on the new partnership that will be launched today between the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control and the Africa Centres for Disease Control and Prevention. This initiative will strengthen the capacity of Africa CDC to prepare for and respond to public health threats. This project illustrates the engagement of the EU to scale up preparedness for global health emergencies and to strengthen support to health systems in Africa. The coronavirus pandemic has shown indeed how crucial it is to invest in health systems to ensure that they are prepared to deal with diseases with pandemic and epidemic potential. This four-year project, EU for Health Security in Africa, will also facilitate harmonized surveillance and disease intelligence and support the implementation of the Public Health Workforce Strategy of Africa CDC. This is a project, of course, funded by the European Union, and it is composed of a contribution agreement with ECDC of 9 million and a complementarity grant of 1 million for the Africa CDC.
Thank you very much, Anna. Avant de passer à vos questions, j'aimerais vous rappeler les réunions et vidéoconférences de la journée. So today, High Representative Josep Borrell is chairing an in-person Foreign Affairs Council. The ministers are discussing a wide range of current issues: Turkey, Venezuela, Georgia, Hong Kong, Ethiopia, human rights sanctions regime, strategic autonomy, and transatlantic relations. HRVP Borrell will inform about the outcomes at the press conference after the meeting later this afternoon, and therefore I would be grateful if you could address your questions on foreign affairs to that press conference. Puis le commissaire Thierry Breton participe aujourd'hui à la vidéoconférence des ministres des télécommunications. Les ministres discuteront de l'acte sur la gouvernance des données que la Commission a présenté le 25 novembre. Sur l'agenda figure également une déclaration commune des États membres concernant l'initiative européenne relative aux processeurs et aux technologies de semi-conducteurs, le règlement vie privée et communication électronique et un règlement portant dérogation temporaire à la directive vie privée et communications électroniques, aux fins de la lutte contre les abus sexuels commis contre des enfants en ligne. Une conférence de presse aura lieu à 13h30 avec M. Breton. Et finalement, ce matin a lieu une réunion informelle par vidéoconférence des ministres de protection des consommateurs, dont les thèmes principaux ont été la durabilité et la numérisation sur le fond de la pandémie du coronavirus. Le commissaire Didier Reynders y représente la Commission et a présenté le nouvel agenda du consommateur adopté récemment par le Collège. Il participera à la conférence de presse qui est prévue pour 14h. Voilà, maintenant nous pouvons passer à vos questions. Eh bien, c'est magnifique. Je ne vois pas de questions pour nous aujourd'hui. Ah, Catherine. Catherine, you're keeping us on the podium. Go ahead.
Sorry about that, Eric. But I have a question about today's discussions in the Joint Committee. Maroš Šefčovič is going to be discussing with his counterpart, Michael Gove, the workings of the withdrawal agreement. But as we know, when the UK introduced its internal market bill, it basically tried to override what it had agreed to in the withdrawal agreement. So given that the House of Commons will be discussing those clauses today and how the House of Lords tried to remove those clauses. But given that it's expected to reintroduce those clauses, I was just wondering, do you think that you can actually negotiate with the UK when it is clearly acting in bad faith?
So the first thing to say is that today is not a joint committee meeting. It's a political meeting between the two. We are negotiating, as you can see, with our British colleagues at this point in time, again, since yesterday. So for the moment, discussions are ongoing, and let us see where they lead. Catherine, you have a follow-up.
Yes, just a comment that was made by the Luxembourgish Foreign Minister, Jean Asselborn, on his way into the Foreign Affairs Council today. He said that Boris Johnson, as Foreign Minister, said that the UK would be leaving the EU, not Europe. And the Minister Asselborn said that without a trade agreement, the UK would be de facto leaving Europe, as no other country, such as Norway or doesn't have a trade agreement with the EU. So I'm just wondering, what would you agree with Minister Asselborn that the UK would be leaving the EU, Europe, in a de facto way by not having a trade agreement?
Catherine, you ask way too sophisticated questions for my foggy brain on a Monday morning, to be honest. First of all, I'm not going to comment on the comments of the Luxembourgish Prime Minister. Europe is a geographical notion. The United Kingdom will remain a European country, whatever happens. What we are discussing with the United Kingdom is whether we can come we can finalize a partnership agreement, a very wide-ranging partnership agreement, which would not simply be a trade agreement, by the way, but also encompass many other dimensions. It is clear that the United Kingdom has already left the European Union, let me remind you. It is still in the transition period, which ends on the last day of the ongoing year, 2020. What will happen afterwards will depend significantly on the discussions which are currently ongoing. I don't want to get into semantics as to whether it will be a European country de facto or de jure or geographically or politically. Voilà. Are there other questions on the issue of the EU-UK negotiations? Patricia.
Good morning, Eric.
Good morning.
Patricia Antonina, Hansa Press Agency. I would like to know what time is foreseen the phone call between President von der Leyen and Premier Johnson. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I've had this question very often. Obviously, if I knew the answer, I would tell you, but unfortunately, I'm not in a position to confirm a timing for the moment. But we will inform you. I will inform you of the timing once it has been set. So stay tuned. Are there other questions on the EU-UK negotiations? Raf.
Yes, good day, Eric. I have a very simple question, and it's, look, we are doing these meetings all by Zoom, and the way I understand it, the president just had a phone call without a physical interaction with Boris Johnson, and it doesn't seem like the 21st century just to have a phone call. Is there a specific reason why you would have just a phone call, listening to one another, and not seeing one another like we do now?
You guys are in great shape this morning, I have to say. Phone diplomacy is a concept that has existed for decades, and some extremely important discussions have taken place over the phone. I don't think it is necessary for two leaders to see each other in order to exchange their arguments and their positions. I can confirm that the phone call which took place, despite not being accompanied by images, was a very substantive call, which discussed the different issues at hand, and you could see it then in the joint statement which we issued. Rest assured that we use the technology in a way that is suited to the objectives. Other questions on the EU-UK negotiations? David.
Oui, merci. Je voulais te demander, David Carretta, Radio Radicale, je voulais te demander quelle est, à votre avis, la date de la dernière chance pour avoir un accord et pouvoir le présenter aux pays membres et avoir une confirmation, une ratification de la part, ou une approbation de la part du Parlement européen. Merci.
Merci David. Écoute, nous ne spéculons pas sur les dates de la dernière chance. Nous sommes entièrement engagés dans des négociations sur la substance et nous avons toujours dit et nous continuons à dire que c'est la substance qui prime sur le timing. Bien entendu, tout le monde sait qu'effectivement le temps est court entre maintenant et la fin de l'année. Mais clairement, nous restons engagés dans les négociations pour nous assurer que ce soit le résultat qui corresponde aux intérêts de l'Union européenne. Et le reste suivra. Follow-up, David.
Tu peux nous confirmer que ce matin, M. Barnier a indiqué la journée de mercredi comme moment avant lequel il faut avoir un accord?
Non, je ne peux pas confirmer ça. Je n'étais pas à cette réunion et je n'ai pas l'habitude de confirmer des propos qui sont tenus dans des réunions fermées. Désolé. Griselda.
Merci. Merci. Est-ce que vous attendiez quand même arriver à ces moments dans cette situation tellement, je ne sais pas, sans savoir exactement ce qui se passe, en réécoutant que tout le poids est chez M. Boris Johnson et tout ça? Est-ce que vous vous attendiez à être presque à la fin d'une année pour empêcher le chaos et réécouter que peut-être on n'aura pas d'accord? Merci.
Celui qui a une boule de cristal et qui est capable de prévoir comment des négociations qui sont les premières de leur genre vont se dérouler et se conclure mériterait un poste de scénariste dans l'industrie du cinéma ou d'écrire des romans. Franchement, nous avons toujours été préparés pour toutes les éventualités, tu le sais, et l'Union européenne a travaillé à tous les différents scénarios possibles afin justement de pouvoir faire face à la situation quelle qu'elle soit. Et comme vous pouvez le constater, nos équipes de négociation travaillent non seulement d'arrache-pied, mais finalement en continu. Et nous sommes tous extrêmement réactifs pour nous adapter à la situation. Qui aurait pu prévoir, par exemple, que la pandémie du coronavirus allait se répandre en Europe et avoir aussi un impact sur la tenue des négociations, que ce soit en termes de timing ou que ce soit en termes de format physique ou par vidéoconférence, pour revenir aux commentaires de Raph précédemment. Donc très sincèrement, nous sommes dans la situation dans laquelle nous sommes. Il est peu utile pour nous de se dire, mon Dieu, avons-nous réfléchi à ça ou pas? Ce qui est clair, c'est que nous faisons tout ce qui est en notre mesure pour pouvoir continuer à mener les négociations jusqu'à leur terme. Catherine, you have another question on this issue.
Yeah, Eric, it's more of a request than a question. The President of the European Commission is very good at giving statements, but not so good at taking questions. And I'm just wondering, today, after her phone call with Prime Minister Johnson, would she be prepared to come to the press room and take questions? I've seen a lot of complaints about journalists speculating and getting things wrong. Well, the simple way to resolve that is to allow the taking of questions.
I don't know from whom you have seen complaints about journalists getting things wrong. We certainly haven't been making complaints. We respect, obviously, entirely your right to report as you see fit. Sometimes we will try to correct mistakes. But as to what the president will do in terms of appearing in front of the press, it will depend entirely on, obviously, the substance of the discussions. Susanna. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning, Susana Fresh, ICN Expresso Portugal. Just one question on the substance, because yesterday we saw some reporting on, well, saying that the negotiating teams, they were closer to an agreement on fisheries. I would like to understand if that's the case, if you can talk about some progress specifically on fisheries, or if the three main issues remain unchanged. Thank you.
It's an interesting segue from the previous question or comment from Catherine. We have no comment to make on the substance of the negotiations that are currently ongoing. But what is clear is that we have seen unsubstantiated reports of progress on one particular issue, in this case, fisheries, which we are not corroborating at this point in time. Any other question for us on Brexit, on the UK negotiations? I do not see any, so I give the floor to Momshil, who has been raising his hand regularly, waiting for the floor.
No, that's not so regularly. Good morning or good afternoon. Does the European Commission has already a comment about the elections in Venezuela, which were boycotted by the opposition? And will the European Commission recognize these elections and their results?
Thank you for your question, Momshil. But as I said during my introductory remarks to this press conference, there is an FAC which is ongoing, which will be followed by a press conference with the HRVP, and I would ask you to address your questions to that press conference. Which means that I will unilaterally close the foreign affairs segment of this press conference in view of this comment, and we will move to other issues. Mose.
Yes, thank you, Eric. This brings me to another question, a follow-up question from last week about health and the corona crisis, especially about the deployment of vaccinations programs in the member states. I think that was one of the issues in the Commission communication last week. And as we know, the success of vaccination will depend on that majority of the populations will agree to get vaccinated. But as we know, there's quite a lot of what is called vaccination hesitancy or reluctance or fear. And also because we know that the efficacy of the different vaccines which the Commission is currently, let's say, trying to acquire, and will probably all be, I think, approved if they meet the standards. They differ when it comes to efficiency between 70 or up to 95%, and also when it comes to long-lasting immunity. So my question is, what is the Commission's, let's say, recommendations to citizens in such a situation? What vaccine should the situation with different performance data? Thank you.
Thank you, Mose. Stefan.
Thank you very much, Mose. This is indeed a very important question, the question of vaccination hesitancy and how we tackle it. You refer to several vaccines. The first thing I would like to stress here is that these vaccines first have to go through the assessment of the European Medicines Agency. So we do not have a vaccine yet which can be put on the market because we're waiting for the assessment by the European Medicines Agency. Each vaccine will, of course, come with its own technical specifications, and these will have to be taken into account when member states are rolling out their vaccination campaigns and vaccination plans. This is, by the way, one of the reasons why in our communication of mid-October, we stressed the importance of being well prepared, the importance for the member states to be well prepared, and already start thinking about the vaccine strategies and making sure that when the vaccines are indeed given the green light by the European Medicines Agency and subsequently by the Commission to be put in the market, that the member states are ready to roll them out, taking into account the specificities and the technical aspects of these different vaccines. Some vaccines, for instance, may be better in tackling transmission and may therefore be useful to be used in a context of health workers, people who have a lot of contact with other people. Other vaccines may, for instance, avoid that the sickness develops and may therefore be interesting to be considered in the context of vaccinating vulnerable people. In any case, as I said, it is very important that member states take this into account. Second thing that I want to add to this idea of being very transparent and ensuring sufficient communication is the fact that building trust of the citizens also requires transparency, and the European Medicines Agency will make available the clinical data that it has used to come to its assessment. It will make available the assessment that it will make to say yes or no, or give a green light or not to a vaccine candidate. And this is also one of the elements that will help addressing vaccine hesitancy. Thank you.
Thank you, Stéphane. Are there other questions for Stéphane today on the issue of vaccination or more generally on health? Georg, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. Georg Blume for Die Zeit, the weekly from Germany. Are you happy with the communication policy of the European Medicine Agency? We had a background briefing last week, where many questions were not answered. And when we were inquiring this weekend for interviews at the EMA, we were said they are busy, please call back next year. Like in Germany, we are very, the media is very aware that we are waiting for the vaccine, and there have been lots of criticism that this is a very valuable time we are losing.
Georg, thank you very much. As it was, I actually listened to the technical briefing that we organized with EMA and with DG Santé last week, and I'm very surprised by your comment because we answered all the questions, or they answered actually, I think, all the questions that were raised that were the subject of the technical briefing. There were a certain number of questions which were raised which were unrelated to the subject and had more a link to the type of contracts we had signed and information about this. But for all the questions related to the vaccination authorization process, to the vaccine authorization process, I believe that they did a good job in terms of answering the questions. But of course, if you have further questions, I do indeed invite you to transmit them to the agency. Obviously, I can imagine that the agency is extremely busy at this point in time, but they have been extremely reactive, in particular when we asked them to participate to this technical briefing, basically from the evening one day to the early afternoon the following day. And as you will remember, they will be organizing a public event on Friday to answer the public's and the media's questions on the strategy. But we will tell them that you have unanswered questions that you would like to see addressed, and to see if they can make contact with you directly. I entrust Stéphane with this task. Any other questions for Stéphane on health issues? That does not seem to be the case. Thank you, Stéphane. Are there other questions for us today? I do not see any, so thank you very much and see you tomorrow or perhaps later today. We will see how things go. Thank you very much.